The following narration of the book contains abundance of gore, violence, and even a good doses of harsh language of the events taking place in the Jurassic Park novel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Reptiles are abhorrent because of their cold body, pale color, cartilaginous skeleton, filthy skin, fierce aspect, calculating eye, offensive smell, harsh voice, squalid habitation, and terrible venom. Wherefore their creator has not exerted his powers to make many of them. Linnaeus, 1797. You cannot recall a new form of life. Erwin Chargaff, 1972. The late 20th century has witnessed a scientific gold rush of astonishing proportions, the headlong and furious haste to commercialize genetic engineering. This enterprise is so rapidly, with so little outside commentary, that its dimensions and implications are hardly understood at all. Biotechnology promises the greatest revolution in human history. By the end of this decade, it will have outdistanced atomic power and computers in its effect on our everyday lives. In the words of one observer, biotechnology is going to transform every aspect of human life, our medical care, our food, our health, our entertainment, our very bodies. Nothing will ever be the same again. It's literally going to change the face of the planet. But the biotechnology revolution differs in three important respects from past scientific transformations. First, it is broad-based. America entered the atomic age through the work of a single research institution at Los Alamos. It entered the computer age through the efforts of about a dozen companies. But biotechnology research is now carried out in more than 2,000 laboratories in America alone. 500 corporations spend $5 billion a year on this technology. Second, much of the research is thoughtless or frivolous. Efforts to engineer paler trout for better visibility in the stream, square trees for easier lumbering, and injectable scent cells so you'll always smell of your favorite perfume may seem like a joke, but they are not. Indeed, the fact that biotechnology can be applied to the industries traditionally subject to the vagaries of fashion, such as cosmetics and leisure activities, heightens concern about the whimsical use of this powerful new technology. Third, the work is uncontrolled. No one supervises it. No federal laws regulate it. There is no coherent government policy in America or anywhere else in the world. And because the products of biotechnology range from drugs to farm crops to artificial snow, an intelligent policy is difficult. But most disturbing is the fact that no watchdogs are found among scientists themselves. It is remarkable that nearly every scientist in genetics research is also engaged in the commerce of biotechnology. There are no detached observers. Everybody has a stake. The commercialization of molecular biology is the most stunning ethical event in the history of science, and it has happened with astonishing speed. For 400 years since Galileo, science has always proceeded as a free and open inquiry into the workings of nature. Scientists have always ignored national boundaries, holding themselves above the transitory concerns of politics and even wars. Scientists have always rebelled against secrecy in research, and have even frowned on the idea of patenting their discoveries, seeing themselves as working to the benefit of all mankind. And for many generations, the discoveries of scientists did indeed have a peculiarly selfless quality. When in 1953, two young researchers in England, James Watson and Francis Crick, deciphered the structure of DNA, their work was hailed as a triumph of the human spirit, of the centuries-old quest to understand the universe in a scientific way. It was confidently expected that their discovery would be selflessly extended to the greater benefit of mankind. Yet that did not happen. 30 years later, nearly all of Watson and Crick's scientific colleagues were engaged in another sort of enterprise entirely. Research in molecular genetics had become a vast, multi-billion-dollar commercial undertaking, and its origins can be traced not to 1953, but to April 1976. That was the date of a now famous meeting in which Robert Swanson, a venture capitalist, approached Herbert Boyer, a biochemist at the University of California. The two men agreed to found a commercial company to exploit Boyer's gene splicing techniques. Their new company, Genentech, quickly became the largest and most successful of the genetic engineering startups. Suddenly it seemed as if everyone wanted to become rich. New companies were announced almost weekly, and scientists flocked to exploit genetic research. By 1986, at least 362 scientists, including 64 in the National Academy, sat on the advisory boards of biotech firms. The number of those who held equity positions or consultancies was several times greater. It is necessary to emphasize how significant this shift in attitude actually was. In the past, pure scientists took a snobbish view of business. They saw the pursuit of money as intellectually uninteresting, suited only to shopkeepers, and to do research for industry, even at the prestigious Bell or IBM labs, was only for those who couldn't get a university appointment. Thus, the attitude of pure scientists was fundamentally critical toward the work of applied scientists and to industry in general. Their long-standing antagonism kept university scientists free of contaminating industry ties, and whenever debate arose about technological matters, disinterested scientists were available to discuss the issues at the highest levels. But that is no longer true. There are very few molecular biologists and very few research institutions without commercial affiliations. The old days are gone. Genetic research continues at a more furious pace than ever, but it is done in secret, and in haste, and for profit. In this commercial climate, it is probably inevitable that a company as ambitious as International Genetic Technologies Incorporated of Palo Alto would arise. It is equally unsurprising that the genetic crisis it created should go unreported. After all, InGen's research was conducted in secret. The actual incident occurred in the most remote region of Central America, and fewer than 20 people were there to witness it. Of those, only a handful survived. Even at the end, when International Genetic Technologies filed for Chapter 11 protection in San Francisco Superior Court on October 5, 1989, the proceedings drew little press attention. It appeared so ordinary. InGen was the third small American bioengineering company to fail that year, and the seventh since 1986. Few court documents were made public, since the creditors were Japanese investment consortia such as Hamaguri and Densaka, companies which traditionally shun publicity. To avoid unnecessary disclosure, Daniel Ross of Cowan, Swain & Ross, counsel for InGen, also represented the Japanese investors. And the rather unusual petition of the Vice Consul of Costa Rica was heard behind closed doors. Thus, it is not surprising that within a month, the problems of InGen were quietly and amicably settled. Parties to that settlement, including the distinguished Scientific Board of Advisors, signed a non-disclosure agreement, and none will speak about what happened. But many of the principal figures in the InGen incident are not signatories, and were willing to discuss the remarkable events leading up to those final 2 days in August 1989 on a remote island off the west coast of Costa Rica.
The tropical rain fell in drenched sheets, hammering the corrugated roof of the clinic building, roaring down the metal gutters, splashing on the ground in the torrent. Roberta Carter signed and stared out the window. From the clinic, she could hardly see the beach or the ocean beyond, cloaked in the low fog. This wasn't what she had expected when she had come to the fishing village in Bahia Nasco, on the west coast of Costa Rica, to spend 2 months as a visiting physician. Bobby Carter had expected sun and relaxation after 2 grueling years of residing in the emergency medicine at Michael Reed's in Chicago. She had been in Bahia Nasco now for 3 weeks, and it had rained every day. Everything else was fine. She liked the isolation of Bahia Nasco and the friendliness of its people. Costa Rica had one of the 20 best medical systems in the world. And even in this remote coastal village, the clinic was well maintained, amply supplied. Her paramedic, Manuel Aragón, was intelligent and well trained. Bobby was able to practice a level of medicine equal to what she had practiced in Chicago. But the rain, this constant, unending rain. Listen. Believe me, I hear it. No, listen. And then she caught it. Another sound blended with the rain, a deep rumbling that built and emerged until it was clear. The rhythmic thumping of a helicopter. They can't be flying in the weather like this. It was a big-bellied Side-Course Sky with a blue stripe on the side, with the words, InGen Corporation. 2 black crewmen carried a limp body towards her, while a white man barked orders. The white man had a yellow slicker. Red hair appeared around the edge of his baseball cap. Is there a doctor here? I'm Dr. Carter. Ed Regis. We got a very sick man here, doctor. Then you better take him to San Jose, she said. We would, but we can't get over the mountains in this weather. You have to treat him here. What happened to him? Construction accident. He fell. One of the backhoes ran over him. Manuel stood by the bright green door of the clinic, waving his arm. The men brought the body through and set it on the table in the center of the room. Manuel started an intravenous line, and Bobby swung the light over the kid and bent to examine the wounds. Immediately, she could see that they did not look good. The kid would almost certainly die. A big tear laceration ran from his shoulder down to his torso. At the edge of the wound, the flex was shredded. At the center, the shoulder was dislocated, pale bones exposed. A second slash cut through the heavy muscle of the thigh, deep enough to reveal the pulse of femoral arteries below. Her first impression was that his leg had been ripped open. Tell me again about this injury. I didn't see it, Ed said. They say the backhoe dragged him. Because it almost looks like he was mauled, Bobby Carter said, prompting the wound. Like most emergency room physicians, she could remember in detail patients she had seen every year before. She had seen 2 maulings. One was a 2-year-old child who had been attacked by a Rottweiler dog. The other was a drunken circus attendant who had had an encounter with a Bengal tiger. Both injuries were similar. There was characteristic looks to an animal attack. Mauled? No, it was a backhoe, believe me. Do you want leverage? Yes, after you block him. She bent lower, propped the wound with her fingertips. If an earth mover had rolled over him, dirt would be forced deep into the wound, but there wasn't any dirt. Just a slippery, slimy foam, and the wound had a strange odor, a kind of rotten stench, a smell of death and decay. She had never smelled anything like it before. How long did this happen? An hour. Again, she noticed how tense Ed Regis was. He was one of those eager, nervous type, and he didn't look like a construction foreman, more like an executive. He was obviously out of his depth. Bobby Carter turned back to the injuries. Somehow, she didn't think she was seeing mechanical trauma. It just didn't look right. No soil contaminations of the wound side, and no crushing injuries compound, mechanical traumas of any sort. Any auto injuries, a factory injury, almost always had some compound of crushing. But here, there was nothing. Instead, the man's skin was shredded, ripped across his shoulder, and again across his thigh. It really did look like a maul. On the other hand, most of the body was unmarked, which was unusual for an animal attack. She looked again at the head, the arms, the hands. She felt a chill when she looked at the kid's hands. There were short slashes cuts on both palms and bruises on the wrist and forearms. She had worked in Chicago long enough to know what that meant. All right, wait outside. Why? Do you want me to help him or not? Manuel hesitated. I continued to watch? Yes, she said. Raptor, Raptor. What does it mean? Bobby said. Manuel shook his head. I do not know, doctor. Raptor no sé español. No? It sounded to her like Spanish. Then please continue to wash him. No, Doctor. Bad smell. Bobby looked again at the slippery foam streaked across the wound. She touched it, rubbed it between her fingers. It seemed almost like saliva. The injured boy's lips moved. Raptor. It bit him. What bit him? Raptor. What's a raptor? It means hupia. The Costa Ricans were not especially superstitious, but she had heard the hupia mentioned in the village before. They were said to be night ghosts, faceless vampires who kidnapped small children. According to the belief, the hupia had once lived in the mountains of Costa Rica, but now inhabited the islands offshore. Manuel was backing away, murmuring and crossing himself. It is not normal. The smell. It is hupia. What the hell's happening? No, the hupia will cross over. Manuel, for God's sakes, no. You do not understand these things. Bobby looked at the body on the ground and realized that it didn't matter. There was no possibility of resuscitating him. Manuel called for the men, who came back into the room and took the body away. Regis appeared, wiping his mouth with his back of his hand, muttering, I'm sure you did all you could. And then she watched as the men took the body away back to the helicopter, and it lifted thunderously up into the sky. It is better, Manuel said. Bobby was thinking about the boy's hands. They had been covered with cuts and bruises, in the characteristic patterns of defense wounds. She was quite sure he did not die in a construction accident. He had been attacked, and he had held up his hands against his attacker. Where is this island they come from? She asked. In the ocean. Perhaps 120 miles offshore. Pretty far for a resort. I hope they never come back. Well, she thought, at least she had pictures. But when she turned back to the table, she saw that her camera was gone. The rain finally stopped later that night. Alone in the bedroom behind the clinic, Bobby thumbled through her tattered paperback Spanish dictionary. The boy had said raptor, and despite Manuel's protest, she suspected it was a Spanish word. Sure enough, she found it in her dictionary. It meant ravisher, or abductor. That gave her a pause. The sense of the word was suspiciously close to the meaning of hupia. Of course, she did not believe in superstition. No ghost had cut those hands. What had that boy been trying to tell her? From the next room, she heard groans. One of the village women was in the first stage of labor, and Elena Morales, the local midwife, was attending her. Bobby went into the clinic room and gestured to Elena to step outside for a moment. Elena? See, doctor? Do you know what is a raptor? Raptor? Yes. You know this word? See, it means a person who comes in the night and takes away a child. A kidnapper? Yes. A hupia? Do not say this word, doctor. Why not? Do not speak of hupia now, Elena said firmly, nodding her head towards the groin of the laboring woman. It is not wise to say this word now, but does a raptor bite and cut its victims? Bite and cut? No, doctor. Nothing like this. A raptor is a man who takes a new baby. I will call to you when she is ready, doctor. I think 1 more hour, perhaps 2. Bobby looked at the stars and listened to the peaceful lappings of the surf at the shore. In the darkness, she saw the shadows of fishing boats anchored offshore. The whole scene was quiet, so normal. She felt foolish to be talking of vampires and kidnapping babies. Bobby went back to her room, remembering again that Manuel had insisted it was not a Spanish word. Out of curiosity, she looked into a little English dictionary, and to her surprise, she found the words there too.